there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. This is the die set that we are going to be kind of mainly using as our main focal point on our card making today. Today is going to be a sending you sunshine kind of card. I'm finished up with my baby cards for now and I am moving on. So this is a 4-piece die set. It comes with the 4 dies that you can see on screen now. And I have some black cardstock here. This happens to be the Gina K one because it's nice and black and a good thickness. So even though it comes with the 4 pieces there, I'm actually just going to use that outside outline die which cuts, and then the next one in, which is kind of a bit more intricate. And then I'm actually just going to use a plain stitched circle die to cut out the middle of this. The other little dies do fit in the center as you saw, but I wanted to keep the center nice and plain because that is where I am going to stamp my sentiment. So luckily they kind of all nest in together and I can just do this with one run through of my die cutting machine. Now my trick when anything is remotely intricate, I use this packaging foam that often comes with AliExpress purchases, and I just put a layer of it down and then put my die on top just like usual. And this always 100% of the time cuts beautifully. So I had never run this die through before, so I don't even know if I would to have any problems with it, but I just always do this no matter what. If I have an intricate die, it saves any fuss at all and I just know it will be cut perfectly. So I'm just gently taking off these wee pieces of paper and then I will reveal this beautiful little piece that we have created. And you can see that most of the pieces popped out. I can just kind of wiggle them out with my fingers quickly. But as I said, it cut perfectly. There's nothing there that didn't cut. There is those tiny little holes that I'm just poking with my scissors, and that looks beautiful. It was about at this point that I had heaps of ideas of what I wanted to do with this die cut that I had created, but I was trying to stay on track with my original idea. So now I have a piece of mirror gold cardstock and I'm just going to cut that outline on it. So using the same outline as before, run it through my machine and it cuts perfectly with a nice kind of stitched edging. But I want to add I want to cut out the center. So I'm going to add that same circle and run this whole thing through my die cutting machine because as I said, I want to stamp my sentiment in the middle of this sort of flower sun creation. And so you will see that the black ended up kind of embossing or partially embossing the gold behind it, but that doesn't matter because this will be glued on here in just a second. So I'm just using some liquid glue. This probably would have been fine if you had added some stick adhesive or something before die cutting it, but anyway, liquid glue works just fine. You could also use some liquid glue with a makeup sponge. That would make a nice tidy job and make sure nothing's smushed out, but this ended up working just fine. It would also be cool maybe if you were able to give this some dimension, but I just wasn't in the mood for being that fussy, so yeah, it's just going straight down nice and flat. And I'm trying to get it kind of in place straight away because you don't want to move the wet glue around and have it kind of smudge on that gold cardstock. So that looks cool already. It was so shiny. I don't know. It was just giving me lots of ideas when I was doing this. So anyway, it looks pretty and we can move on. It does look a little bit plain when I hold it up against here. This is a super simple card. So here I'm just going to cut out a black matte for the background, and so it will go my 110-pound Nina Solar white card base and then a black matte and then this white piece. And again, the white piece looks super plain, so I'm actually going to do some embossing on it. I have the stencil here and I'm pretty sure this one is from AliExpress as well, as is the die set. So I will try and link them down below if I can still find them for you. And I just want to know where the center of that sun needs to kind of sit for the stencil. So I'm just going to draw a little circle on the inside using my die, just with a little pencil. And then I actually end up cutting a mask out and kind of putting it over top there because remember I am going to stamp my sentiment in the middle, and so I don't want any embossing or anything there to get in the way. And I really want to have nice clean lines. I don't want to be able to see any from like the inside of that, the sun or the flower, whatever it is. And just because of like the rays in the stencil, I'm trying to make sure that it's pretty even in the middle. I don't want it to look off center or anything like that. And I'm just going to use a little sponge dauber, like on a Ranger applicator tool, and some sticky embossing ink, and I'm just going to kind of pounce it through the stencil. I'm just holding it there to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere, as well as the tiny little bits of tape that are holding it down. And then this will be hard for you to see, but it does have, you can kind of see it there where the ink has gone through to create the pattern. I just want it to be super subtle. It's just meant to be a little bit of something to keep the background a little bit more interesting than being plain. So I'm just using some super fine white embossing powder. I think it might be a Ranger one, and I am going to heat set that. Now, I must admit, for the rest of the card, it's really hard to see on video for you guys, this detail, but in real life, it kind of was a perfect amount of adding something a little bit extra to the background, whilst not being kind of overwhelming and still making that the sun or the flower the focus point of the card. So I'm just taking off that mask because I need that middle to be nice and clean and clear and nothing on it. So you can see that worked out perfect. And from here I am just going to stamp the little sentiment. This is a stamp set from AliExpress as well, and it's just going to say, "You are my sunshine." I would have loved to have used that big kind of scripty sunshine at the top, but there was just no way that it was fitting on the card, not top, not bottom, not in the middle, so I just gave up and used this nice plain smaller sentiment for the middle. So just lining it up on my Misty, that way I really don't want to muck up the card at this point. So I've got it all lined up, and I'm just going to add some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Just make sure that it's nice and dark so I can stamp it a couple of times and then let that dry a little bit. First of all, I'm going to add my black matte layer with some liquid glue. I can use liquid glue and it gives me a second to move it around for this piece. However, when I put my next matting layer down, I'm going to use some double-sided tape. And the reason that I'm going to use tape for this layer is because I did some embossing on it and it's not too warped at all, but it is a tiny bit. So I'm just going to use some tape, and that will mean that it sits down nicely. This tape is all from AliExpress. I get most of my adhesives from AliExpress and I find them absolutely perfect. Love them. So I will try and link them down below if you are interested. And then just adding the final little bit on this card, I absolutely go to town with these foam squares. Again, these are from AliExpress, and I want this card to be held up nicely, so I'm going to add lots of these and then take off the release paper and stick it in the middle. This card is super simple, but I must admit the gold mirror cardstock gives it just that absolute shine, and as I said, the embossing is really hard for you guys to pick up, but it does give it that perfect amount of interest in the background so that the card isn't too plain. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed this card and you can create something similar. I will see you in the next card and I look forward to it. Thanks. Bye.